Gentlemen, you are both drunk on cosmic wine.
Welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Mark Sylvester.
And I'm Dr. Richard Schulman. This is Alt Psych.
And like that, we're live on tape. Very special guest today, guest co-host, no doubt. I think you're technically the first inaugural guest co-host.
That's exciting for me. I like that.
It's exciting for our viewers because although you are our co-host, secretly you're a bit of an expert on the topic, of both of which I'm really excited about. You and I have talked a lot about acupuncture. We're going to be more focusing on Egyptian acupuncture and shamanism, both of which you know a little something about. But let me first introduce Adrian Sundberg, so acupuncturist extraordinaire, shaman, healer, energy work. You've been doing this over 20 years.
Yeah, almost 25.
I have to remind myself that you're almost as old as me.
I'm older than you.
I know, I just wasn't going to give you away, but no one will believe that. No one will believe that.
Yeah, I think they might.
So it's an honor and a privilege to have you here and in the office. And I'm sure Richard thanks you for pinch hitting today. What the heck? We've talked about acupuncture on the show before.
Yes.
But so I guess maybe we can briefly sort of remind people what basic acupuncture is. Let me try to explain it, and then you tell me how far off I am.
Okay.
So most people think of acupuncture as an ancient Chinese, basically something the Chinese uncovered and standardized into practice, certainly dating back thousands of years. But in the last 100 years, there's been a tremendous amount of evidence that it existed long before the Chinese even, with a lot of evidence going way back to ancient Egypt, 5,000 years. I think that's super amazing and super exciting. But the basic tenet that I understand is the body has energetic pathways, meridians. It's not something that Western medicine can easily measure, like an EKG or an EEG, but there were a time we couldn't measure either of those. We still understood the systems. And through the appropriate placement, right, of these tiny, non-invasive, barely wider than a human hair needles, they're placed either on significant nodal points or along the meridians themselves as a way to promote healing, open up the energetic pathways, or with the Egyptian, some of the additional Egyptian techniques may promote sacred geometry, movement through chakras. Am I getting like remotely close?
You are. You do. You've got a great explanation going there. You've done it.
Great show.
And Chinese medicine does date back several thousand years. And it is based on the premise that we have 12 different acupuncture meridians connected to, and each is connected to a different organ. And along the acupuncture meridians are different points, and each point may treat a different condition. There's 365 points on the body. Needless to say, we don't use all of them at any given time. We may use, any acupuncture physician probably uses 50 to 60 points kind of as what they choose from. And then during any given treatment, it might be 10 or 12 or 18 points or whatever they use. But what these points do is they stimulate the flow of blood, oxygen, and nutrients throughout your body so that your body can heal itself to the best of its own ability. So it's kind of like reaching inside of you.
Well, and the bioenergetics of it too, right?
Absolutely. Our bodies are electrical. I mean, that's just a proven scientific fact. And we're working, in essence, with electricity. When there's kind of like an interrupted circuit, we're reprogramming the circuit breakers, kind of telling your body, no, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to unblock everything, and the body likes it. People become very relaxed during acupuncture. It's not painful at all.
Do you sometimes add, I know in traditional acupuncture, sometimes you can add heat, pressure, or even a mild electric current to the needles?
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Some practitioners do use what's called moxa, which is actually a species of chrysanthemum flower. It looks like a big cigar. And you can burn it over certain points if someone is deficient or if their condition, indicates that it's needed. And the warmth actually can penetrate the skin and travel through the body and warm up that organ. If in Chinese medicine it's too cold. In Chinese medicine, it's all about the yin yang, the balance between all of the opposites, heat and cold, dryness and dampness, the sun and the moon, female and male. So it's based on nature to a large degree, and how nature behaves in the world, it can also behave in our bodies.
Well, so how does that moxibustion, what you're talking about, compare to like cupping? Because I think people have heard of cupping too.
Well, cupping pulls stagnation out. So cupping is used when muscles are really tight and painful, if there's a lot of toxicity. But they're used mainly on the back, but they can be used in different parts of the body. Where warmth is very tonifying and strengthening and gentle, cupping is literally pulling out stagnation. So if you have a tight muscle, we might think you have something called blood stagnation, where things just aren't moving. So by using the cupping, it's pulling all the stagnation out. So you'll actually see marks like you've seen on the Olympic swimmer guy. I can't remember his name right now, but people were commenting.
Michael Phelps.
Yes, because there were cut marks all over his back. And Gwyneth Paltrow was doing it for a while, and they're the kind of the people who made it famous. But it's very therapeutic, and people love it. It feels really good.
Yeah, and I just find it really fascinating, the concept of like tapping into the body's bioelectric field in general. I mean, that it's not a new concept, but tapping in electrically kind of is for me. I guess I hadn't really thought as much about that because it's a little different. I don't know if it's actually different subspecialty or anything, but you mentioned 365 points. Is there any correlation between that and the number of days in a year, or is that just my math brain making associations?
Yes and no. I don't remember ever having read a specific correlation, but with numerology and sacred geometry and all the things that I'll bet there is. I'll bet there's some sort of correlation. But with the acupuncture points, they flow along the different meridians, kind of like a river. So at certain points where the energy comes to a certain point, different points do different things. Some for acute conditions, some for more chronic. And we're always treating the emotional, the physical, and the physiological. So we're treating the cause of what's wrong and not just treating the symptoms.
I think what's kind of cool about it is, if there are people that are skeptical, which we don't really speak to that much, I find that when you get them in there, you get them on the table, especially with some of the more powerful and the latest Egyptian techniques you've been studying, they all feel profoundly shifted, profoundly different when they leave. And that's, to me, pretty amazing, and certainly not explained by the fact that maybe you just relaxed or took a nap or chilled out for an hour or whatever.
Right.
What is it they're actually feeling? Has it raised their vibration level? Are they feeling just a shifting of energies and kind of more of a flow? I'm just amazed that it can shift your body awareness, your energy, your perception. It's really quite profound.
It is interesting, isn't it? I know that part of it is endorphin release. So people are feeling endorphins.
Okay.
I believe part of it is the body just likes to be balanced, if that makes any sense. So it's kind of like when I look at people, I almost see points light up, so to speak. And it's kind of like artwork in a way. When you put in the needles, I can see energetically people's body, like if they're tilted one way, they kind of straighten up, so to speak. Or if the brain isn't connecting properly with the right and left, things just kind of start to harmonize. I think innately, subconsciously, deeply, we like that, even if we don't know that we were looking for it. Our bodies are like, yes, finally, I just needed you to move this thing, so there's just.
So it's kind of like a release, and you're resettling towards an energetic center. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's stimulating the parasympathetic. It's getting you out of fight or flight. It's relieving inflammation. It's circulating all the blood and oxygen. It's getting things moving to where they need to be.
Well, it can certainly, in theory, be used to treat or cure even a long list of diseases. I do know that some conditions respond better than others, and then I guess that naturally makes sense, just kind of common sense. But what would you say it works the best for? I mean, is it more the musculoskeletal, arthritis, aches, migraines? is it more endocrine, lymph, or nervous, or is it things like, you hear a lot about acupuncture and high blood pressure, hypertension. It works spectacularly well for fibromyalgia, sciatica, facial palsies, all kinds of things. Hormonal, like menstrual irregularities, PMS, irregular bleeding. Like the list just goes on and on. It's almost shocking. Like you said, 365 points. You're going to obviously have a lot of targets, but what do you like see coming through the door, and what do you like less like see? Like, okay, well, this is going to be less responsive of a condition versus, oh, this is just bread and butter, easy stuff.
Chinese medicine works really well for chronic degenerative conditions that Western medicine has a hard time treating, with the exception of medications. So I do like treating people that have emotional imbalances, because that's where one area where I've seen a huge difference with people kind of coming back to who they are, kind of being able to sort through the garbage and archetypes and all the things they've been dealing with. I love treating emotional conditions. Pain responds beautifully to acupuncture. That is a really easy bread and butter kind of thing, because I've so long. I can do it with both hands tied behind my back because I'm just used to it, whether it's sciatica or knee pain or shoulder pain. And where the person's body is, of course, depends on how much better they're going to be. If you're bone on bone, I'm very honest with people. If you come in with bone on bone knee condition, I probably can't help you. Can I make it feel better temporarily? Yeah. Is it going to make it go away? I really doubt it. Tinnitus is another weird thing that acupuncture has a harder time with.
Really?
Yeah, ringing in the ears. That is, interestingly enough, one of the harder things to treat. But as far as gastrointestinal disorders, allergies, immune support, there's just so many things, because there's all these things under all these names, but I'm really looking at the causal symptoms. So we can call it whatever we want, but I might call it liver qi stagnation and spleen qi deficiency, but it could be 50 different things in the symptom picture.
Well, then the next logical progression is the Egyptian technique. So one, I was really surprised that I always just think of acupuncture, I think of China. I'm like, they've been doing it thousands of years. They've been around really longer than a good bulk of modern human descendants. It's an ancient wisdom, but lo and behold, the Egyptians were doing this, and they do it slightly different. And all I can say that I know, I guess the difference is, and I should have written this down, because now I'm going to go blank. But one, they incorporate sacred geometry.
Yes.
Which does the Chinese technique do that at all, or is there any parallel, I guess, in the Chinese method? Not
that I've ever known, but I'm just starting to scratch the surface of sacred geometry and these Egyptian treatments. I mean, as you very well know, I've been on quite the health journey the past few years. And as I'm coming out of it and my brain's kind of reorganizing itself, my interests are exploding with all the different things that I want to learn. I've done this for so long, but I don't want to say get in a rut, but you just kind of get used to doing what you do, and you do what you do, and you're good at it. People like it, and that's enough. But I really find, after everything I've been through these past few years, a real need to dig deep, to really find the things that help people. And with the Egyptian acupuncture, I've always been interested in Egypt. I don't know why, but I've always found it fascinating. My grandmother was there in 1926 when they opened up King Tut's tomb. And I actually have some artifacts from it. It's pretty cool.
Isn't that grave robbing?
Yeah, it might have been, but it was 100 years ago. So they opened it, it happened.
The cursed spirits are long gone, I'm sure.
You never know. But I've always just found Egypt fascinating, like the history, and it's just so fascinating, and the ancientness of it, so to speak. I don't think that's quite a word. But and I have friends that I meditate with recently, and they started talking about their Merkaba, which I have one around my neck now because I absolutely love it. I feel very drawn to it. So all these Egyptian things are pouring in, and during my meditations, I've actually met a new spirit guide. She said I called her forth, and she's Egyptian. And what I'm learning is, as I open up more is that she's hopefully in time, what I've heard or been told, that she's going to give me information, to help others. And I think there's thousands of us that are all on the spiritual quest, or millions, to look back instead of all the technology, all the social media and such. And so I'm babbling. But that's why I started getting into the Egyptian acupuncture. And then I got an email with a note about this book that had come out called Egyptian Esoteric Acupuncture. And it's trans-channeled by someone named Kevin Ryerson, who I guess has been on Good Morning America and Oprah and is quite famous. And an acupuncture physician named Jay Chung asked him to channel the Yellow Emperor because he wanted to know more about Chinese medicine. And instead, who came through was this Egyptian spirit named Antun Ray, who basically dictated this entire book about Egyptian acupuncture. Sounds a little off, sounds a little crazy, I know, but when you, as an acupuncture physician, when you read this book and you start combining some of the points, I've just seen such tremendous changes with people.
Well, another cool thing, like you think of sacred geometry, it shows up in a lot of ancient and modern cultures. Pagans relied a ton on geometry. I mean, okay. Some people think Stonehenge itself is a sacred geometric collection. It's not so much, an astronomical tool as it was sacred geometry. And if you think of like witchcraft, when they've got like their pentagram and the circle, they keep these spirits locked in.
Yeah.
It's actually like permeated multiple cultures, and there's a certain power. It almost reminds me of like numerology. There's certain power and wisdom and quantitative patterns, whether those are frequency, energetic vibrations versus color. Color is another thing that changes our physiologic state, versus the geometry itself, and that concept that there are universal shapes that have power of some sorts, positive, negative, healing, illness causing, even things in modern culture we know that interfere with our biology, whether that's non-ionizing radiation or some of the more modern, people are worried about 5Gs and cell phones. If it interfered with the sacred geometry, if it knocked it off kilter, like you said, someone responds really well to acupuncture because they're it's almost like being off balance on your left foot for a long time, and then all of a sudden returning to center. It's a lower energy state. It's easier to not be distracted. It's more focused and balanced. And I kind of feel like the sacred geometry overlaid with acupuncture activates a different type of energy than the acupuncture itself. Yes,
I would agree. Like I said, I feel like I've barely begun to scratch the surface of this, but it's interesting because there's the basic Egyptian acupuncture treatment, and it talks a lot about the triple warmer, which in Chinese medicine is always kind of like when you learn about it in Chinese medicine, it's kind of like this nebulous kind of thing, like you're really not sure, but it's a channel. It distributes fluids and such, but in Egyptian acupuncture, it's incredibly important, and it's said to release latent adult stem cells, heal the brain, work on the pineal, the pituitary, the hypothalamus, work on all the different parts of the brain to bring it together, working on the third eye. I'm having people see spirit animals. I'm having people go back into past lives where they've done some work, but all of a sudden they're like, well, all of a sudden I went down so much further down the path.
You made me see a rabbit, remember?
And you saw a rabbit, which is spirit,
which means I'm kick-ass, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, these are fast.
I'm loosely translating, but yeah.
So I just kind of playing with it really almost right now as I just learn more about it, because in reading the book, it gives different suggestions for the different points, but it's much different than traditional Chinese medicine. And it is to achieve higher states of consciousness, intuition, heal physical, emotional traumas. And when combined with gem elixirs and flower essences, which is now what I'm starting to add in as well, it adds that additional vibrational healing. Because isn't that what we all need, right? Is that healing from deep within? I mean, it might be our ankle or our foot or our stomach hurts, but when I'm talking to people, I just have to ask a few questions, and people want so much more for themselves, but they just don't know it. Myself included, you know?
Well, you know, your analogy of kind of like being off balance for a long time and then having it suddenly restored, I think it's a really good analogy, because I tend to think of what we've gone through the last couple years and the amount of stress and fear and unrest. It's cut us all off further from our source. It's at the very least wrecked our coping mechanisms and skills, and we get more black and white in our thinking, and us versus them, and the primitive set of, you know, the way we interact with threat, or the perception of threat. And it's a wound that's deeper than a lot of wounds on a society scale have historically been for a long time. And so we're all really off balance and really don't know what else to do. And so when people get this kind of healing, I think it's especially cathartic, because they're like extra behind the 8 ball right now. Yeah,
I tend to agree. I think it's what people want. You know, I see people more and more, myself included, especially wanting to get away from the news and social media and all just the garbage out there, feeling like you need to be a certain way or look a certain way, or dealing with, like you said, the leftover issues from COVID, or always watching, you know, a lot of my patients say, watch the news. I can't stand it. I watched the news accidentally a few weeks ago. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Now, I think we need to be filled with beauty and love. And yes, we need to be informed and make informed and educated decisions, but we're missing so much. I mean, just walking outside in the forest, or sticking your feet in the sand on Siesta Beach. You know, there's a missing element of grounding and of balance that people don't have right now.
And the value of that currency is higher than at any point of anything I've seen in my lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
Do you, going back to we talked about the Egyptian acupuncture, we talked about kind of it being a little different and unique from the Chinese because of the additional stem cell and tissue regeneration approach, also the sacred geometry, which is something we've all been studying and learning a lot more, and discovering the clinical utility of it for various ailments. And then the third eye thing, which you touched on, what does that have to do with the triple warmer? It was something I ran across in my research. Have you heard of that?
Well, the triple warmer is a meridian in Chinese acupuncture that distributes, but it's always kind of this, I mean, when I studied it, probably now 30 years ago, it was kind of this weird nebulous thing that I always had a hard time putting my finger on what it really even was. But Egyptian acupuncture states that it is essential, and certain points on the triple warmer are absolutely essential to this deep, deep healing of our consciousness, because it does distribute the stem cells, it works on tissue regeneration, and it's working on the pineal and the different parts of the brain. And it like pulls any kind of acupuncture treatment together and makes it much more powerful. There's a lot in this book that it's like I need to read it like a third time, about despecializing of cells, and this Egyptian spirit Antoine Ray that translated this information is remarkable. And you read it, and you're like, really? But it's true. I mean, you can just feel it. Like the wisdom is there. It's just embracing it.
There, you know, I still think like an engineer, and in engineering, there's a concept which ultimately is kind of a holy grail of understanding basic engineering, and it has to do with scalability, and it's something called the Reynolds number, which is, I'm sure, named after a dead white guy. But it says, like, if you build an airplane, let's say like a 747, you, in theory, based if the engineering principles are sound, you should be able to build a 747 of any scale. So you should be able to build a totally functional 747 that's this big, with all of the same control surfaces and aspect ratios and all of that, all the way up to, let's say, a 747 the size of the planet. And it sounds like a really kind of basic concept, but it's actually extremely important. And it has to do with the, I guess, the solidarity of design and the scalability of multiples, which is not unlike what happens in acoustic energy and healing sounds and harmonics and the pentatonic scales and all of that, but also on a cellular level, just like a fractal or any of these sacred geometries, they're numerically based, they have a frequency, they have a resonance, but they more importantly have a scalability. I was listening to a Zach Bush podcast the other day, and he was talking about this, and it was really interesting because I'd never heard anybody explicitly state that, but he was essentially saying each cell in your body, if you scaled it up, has that knowledge, wisdom, resonance, to connect with the entire universe, with our entire source. And so it got me thinking about sacred geometry in preparation for this show, that you can keep scaling down just like the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
And no matter what, you keep chasing that same universal balance, that same truth. To me, that's the closest fundamental way of me understanding acupuncture's ability to engage with, alter, and restore our natural bioenergetics from the subatomic microscopic level all the way up to our whole body, because our body doesn't really get sick until it's really been chronically beaten.
Right.
And it's been in these really maladaptive patterns. Again, there we go with patterns. By the time you have a headache or a tight muscle or, God forbid, cancer or more serious illness, you've been dealing with some serious crap for a while to get off balance, to get off kilter. Do you need to do equal amount of work to undo or to restore? In other words, like acupuncture, do you get some people that maybe you open up a pathway or a channel and you might treat them once or twice and they're cured? Or is it the kind of thing you got to do 3 times a week for 10 years and then you're not really sure if anything's happened or changed?
I hope it's not 3 times a week for 10 years.
I just said that for
So
laughs.
I have had a few patients for over 20 years, but just for maintenance. No, with acupuncture, my general rule is let's start with 4 treatments, 1 treatment a week, and get a rate of response and see if this is helping you. Because I can give an educated guess, like I'm sure you can as well, with what you've seen over time and what you've seen us do this and then it's that. But generally speaking, acupuncture will heal your body to the best of its own ability to heal. So if your body can heal 100%, then it will. If it's 60%, then that's what will happen, because we're using your body's energy as well as my bioenergetic field, which is what I'm utilizing when I'm treating you, to heal you. So the word cure is a dubious one. I don't use that ever because, of course, people read too much into it. But my hope, of course, is that all of my patients reach the most, joyful, abundant state of health that they can. And most people within 4 treatments will get a sense of what's going to happen. It might be up and down, but of course, we want the overall trend to be heading up.
I just thought of this question, so I apologize. But do you ever see it make people worse? And if so, how? And what is worse, I guess? But do you ever uncover additional problems they didn't even know that they have? And they're like, well, thanks, I came here for headaches, and now I found out that, I wasn't hugged enough as a child or whatever.
Acupuncture can temporarily worsen conditions. So normally that happens with people that have been in severe pain for a very long time. When you start to stir it up, it acts up, and as those meridians, start to unclog, so to speak, kind of like a garden hose that's twisted up, it can be more painful initially. Usually that might happen the first treatment, and then sometimes, things clear out that much more easily. As far as making anything else worse, not really. But I do find that a lot of people live with a lot of things every day that they don't have to live with. And it's really those conversations that are surprising to people. Like, oh, I have headaches every day. That's not normal, or, oh, I've been and I'm in the bathroom 10 times a day, but that's just me. I've been that way for 20 years. And it's like, you don't have to be that way. You don't have to suffer.
Well, then that was a good question then I thought of there on the spot. It's true of any healing modality. If you think about it, it has, even if you were, I'm trying to think of a good Western analogy, maybe taking antibiotics, they give you a new set of problems, right? They upset your stomach. They can cause anxiety. There's all kinds of things they can do the doctors never tell you about, but we know about, we see very commonly. I'm surprised the doctors don't admit that or recognize that. And then someone comes back, hey, I started this antibiotic and I'm having panic attacks. And they think, well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, it definitely 100% has to do with that. As it's killing off these bugs, you're killing off good bugs, you're releasing toxins from bad bugs, you're overloading detox pathways, you're dumping toxins in people's tissues, brains, and then their excretion organs and all of that. So I was wondering if there was some energetic equivalent. That's kind of interesting.
People can sometimes have emotional releases as well. Usually, not always, but usually I can pick up when that's going to happen if someone's had a traumatic event that they've repressed for a long time. The body, I find, has to sometimes release old emotional issues before it can heal. So it will bring things to the surface. So that would be a good example is, I had a patient recently who had a huge car accident and it was bad. And she was healing beautifully, but I said, have you cried since this all happened? And she's like, no. And I'm like, do you feel like you've dealt with what happened? Because that's a pretty big deal. I mean, she was like 65 miles an hour in total, And she's like, no. And I said, I have a feeling this might have you start processing some information. So just so you know. And sure enough, she went home and had a big cry and a big release. So it can stir things up like that for sure. But that's helpful. There's no side effects to acupuncture, so to speak. I mean, occasionally you might get a bruise, this or that, but it doesn't typically do harm, if that's a good way to put it. There's no harmful side effects.
Do you find that the Egyptian technique tends to uncover more of the emotional trapped energy in the body? Like, I'm kind of trying to dovetail a little bit into the concept of shamanism, of a shaman, the role of the shaman, kind of the theory behind what they're doing. Do you think that the Egyptian model, I guess, is any different than let's say the Chinese acupuncture at releasing those repressed, stored traumas that, like you said, the body keeps the score of?
From what I'm reading, it does work on a deeper level with those emotional releases. It's very interesting. I'm finding I had one patient recently that I treated with the Egyptian acupuncture, and her first response when she came out of it was, "It didn't do anything." And I said, "It didn't do anything. What do you mean?" She goes, "I didn't feel anything." I said, "All right, well that's fine." Because no expectations. We're just going to try things because she wanted to explore. So she comes out of the treatment room. She goes, I saw these geometric shapes above my head and they were purple. And then I saw this panther walking beside me. And then I saw this, and she's going on and on and on. She's like, oh my God. And then she got in her car. She's texting me at a stoplight. She burst into tears, had this big emotional realization and realized she was seeing sacred geometry. Her spirit animal, who was a panther, was very symbolic for her. And she had actually gone on this big journey, but she didn't remember when she first came out of it.
Right.
Which is so interesting to me. But it was just so cute. She's like, no, nothing happened. Then all of a sudden she's like, oh my God. She was calling me, texting me, and freaking out.
I mean, that's a perfect example of how we're so shifted into the earth plane, into the worries of your day, into your agenda, into your device distractions, that we're operating on an energetic plane so far removed from our nature that she didn't even realize it. She's like, well, nothing happened, because she's used to something like a car smashing into her at 65 miles an hour. That'll get your attention.
Right.
And that shift has totally turned away from inward and sort of our source and the wisdom and the connected. We were talking before the show about why throughout history we haven't gotten better at this. We haven't learned more about this. We've done the opposite. We tend to either forget a lot of these ancient traditions, poo-poo them, get distracted by some new technology that we seem to think is going to be all that much better or greater. It's very peculiar to me that time has affected, I guess, humanity's understanding and utilization of these ancient healing modalities. They still are being obviously practiced, but why have we forgotten it? And more importantly, do you think that we're actually, as a country or even as a species, finally waking up to it because we're forced to, with being stuck in so many ways that the usual bag of tricks aren't helping and able to connect with?
You know, it's an interesting question, and of course I don't have any answers, but it just...
Well, you're the guest host, so you have to make them up.
Okay, money.
Okay, that's a big one.
Politics, pharmaceutical industry, it's all money generated.
Big time, yeah.
To me, that's my take on it. It's all about money and power. You know, these aren't things, the acupuncture and the alternative medicine and the energy work. These aren't things that people make money from. I mean, I guess there probably are some gurus out there who made some big thing out of it. These aren't money makers. This isn't about money. This is about our soul, about our spirit, about the earth, about what we owe Mother Earth to take care of her. These are big, deep, soul-wrenching spiritual questions to me. And like you said, we're not doing the inner work. And I wasn't doing the inner work for years. You know, I would dabble. You know, I trained in shamanism and I do medical intuitive work. And I've been lucky that the bit I've done has been enlightening enough that I was able to do that and do it well and help people. But now I see I was just skimming the surface. And so now that I've had this 3 years of, you know, pretty horrific illness, and now I'm so much better, instead of dabbling on the surface, I feel like I'm starting to live it, if it makes any sense. Like I'm in. Yeah. I'm in. Just, you know, feeling like I want to be in energy medicine, and I want to look within, and I want to serve. I want to give back.
You're in the flow. You're in the flow. Yeah.
I'm in the flow, and you help me tremendously, you know, and you and other doctors, and I want to give back, you know, and I want to help other people in the way that I've been helped. And I think that is listening to our subconscious, listening to our bodies, and allowing ourselves to heal so that we can elevate and be part of a larger community.
And isn't that what shamanism has done since the beginning of time, is to help use a healer to connect, let's just say, a patient, you know, with spiritual energies or divination or connecting with bardo plane, like you said, spirit animals, a lot of the different paths that shamans historically have taken. And that's the definition, really, of how a shaman does healer, is to connect on that energetic soul level. Mm-hmm. I was really surprised. I looked up the word shaman. It's actually a Russian word. Yeah, there are lineage, traces of shamanism in Russia. But what did you find as far as the definition? I just thought it was weird because shamanism has been around probably since the beginning of humankind. For it to not be named, or at least the colloquial name to be based on a Russian word, was kind of weird to me. That is weird. Yeah, it comes from the Tunguska language, which of course is the super northeast remote part of Siberia, basically. And these healers were called shaman. The males were called shamans. Of course, you know, they put a ka on everything that's female. So I guess a female shaman's a shamanka. I'm not really sure, but it's a Russian word. It's kind of weird because I don't think of Russia when I think of shamans. Yeah, no, I don't either. I think more, you know, the Maya, the Inca, the Native Americans, you know, all the different ancestries that went through there for sure. And it's all about healing and using, you know, the energies of Mother Earth and her ancestors to heal and to restore our souls.
And when I trained in it, which was over 11 years ago now, I didn't know what I was getting into. I mean, it was just like with acupuncture. The light went off. I decided I was doing it. And then before you knew it, I was in, Oriental medical school, having no idea what I was doing, but just had to do it. So I did it. And shamanism was very similar for me. And again, that took a year. The medicine wheel and the study of it takes about a year because you do 4 different directions. And I didn't know anything about it, but I had been invited to train with a very well-respected teacher. And at first I actually said no, but my husband actually convinced me to do it. I just had a baby, my second child, and he said, you have to do this. Because I was like, I'm working and the baby and da, da, da. And he's like, no, you are doing this. I will take care of the children and you're doing this. So I did. And all of a sudden I was learning about chakra healings and eliminations and soul retrievals, and we had homework, and I read a stack of books this big, and it was a lot. And it really, like you said, it really is in being in touch with the earth, with the spirits, with recognizing it and nurturing it and loving it.
What was kind of interesting about shamans, and there's no like agreed upon definition of the word shaman, which is kind of interesting, but I think of Carlos Castaneda. That's why my name is Carlos Castaneda today, in honor of Don Juan. But, the art of dreaming, the magic of dreaming, the whole point is the shaman, in most definitions, alters their own state of consciousness.
Correct.
So I think of you as a shaman. How can you be a good shaman if you yourself can't really alter? And I'm not talking like, the drinking of the ayahuasca and the spirit quest. I'm talking about, let's just say you could channel and focus your energy through meditation or practice or neurofeedback or acupuncture or anything. You don't get the luxury of doing that. It's not like you do a lot of preparation in that regard.
Yeah.
How is a modern day shaman able to connect with other spirit guides, whether that's the patient's spirit guides, their own spirit guides, and do it on a schedule? Hey, I've got a 3:30. I better have my chakras all aligned and my chi channeled and crouch my kundalini. How do you do that? Because I have witnessed it. I've seen it. We've got healers. We've got Rich and Sam and Nickel and all kinds of people like that I watch do it before my very eyes. And I'm thinking, well, geez, we're not in a TP, with smoking tobacco, or we're not in the South American jungle taking ayahuasca.
I think it's, for me, it's within all of us to have that access. And when it comes specifically to shamanic treatments, or healings, so say a soul retrieval. If I'm scheduling a soul retrieval, number one, I leave a lot of extra time. Number two, I prepare. People don't know how much I prepare before they get there, but it's the opening of sacred space. Mm-hmm. It's protecting myself energetically. It's honoring our ancestors. It's prayer. It's meditation. So there's that piece of it that people don't even know. The candles are lit, but the people don't realize the symbolism of that is fire to burn what we need to get rid of. And when I go into a soul retrieval, after we do some chakra balancing and get someone calm, I'm actually sitting at their head, holding the back of their neck, and I turn on the shamanic drums. Once I do that, I'm gone. Because see, I've journeyed a great deal with shamans that have mentored me. And when I hear those drums, I'm out. And I immediately go to the underworld. And within shamanism, when you go to the underworld, that's where you gather the information.
Right.
Person that you're working with. So for me, that's an altered state that I can achieve quite quickly. And I go and I gather my information during that period of time. And it may take 10 minutes or 20 minutes, or however long it takes. And then as the drums start to end, I time it. I come back out with the information. And then I'm incorporating it with the patient's healing.
That is super cool.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you did that much in terms of preparation. I mean, and it's the kind of thing I'm sure you when you practice, you get better at. Probably some days it comes easier than others.
Yeah.
But you're literally doing what the classical, I think most people understand, would agree, shamans throughout cultures and histories have done. They just probably used some sort of sacrament to I don't like to think of it as tune their brain. I think of it as undoing the distraction. So if you know, these mind altering chemicals that are usually involved, whether that's mescaline, peyote, ayahuasca, all that, it's interrupting the brain's focus, attention, perception of consensus reality, what you and I are witnessing together right now, and can objectively say, yep, we're here. Although we're not really here, we're technically on the internet, which makes us possibly omnipotent, or I'm not sure. But it's not connecting with the, like you said, the underworld, or spirit guides or supernatural realms or dimensions to access information, which may be informative and guiding healing, or bumping into soul fragments that are missing, that are duplicated, that are stuck from another time, place, person. What do you do when you get there? What does a shaman do when they recognize the problem, when they download information about what's going on with that patient?
Well, the way that I was trained is you're first looking for, in a soul retrieval especially, you're looking for a soul fragment. You're looking for the age that it occurred. You're looking for the contract that it made. And, you know, there will be contracts. Usually, obviously, not very good ones, like nobody loves me, or I'm not cared for, or I'm no good. Yeah, so we're looking for the contracts that soul piece made and why it left. Then we're breaking that contract and we're writing new ones. We're looking for gifts that were lost, because when a soul piece in the world of shamanism, during a trauma, the soul, a part of the soul may leave, kind of splinter and kind of go to Mother Earth to be safe. So it takes the bad memory with it, but it also takes good things too. So we're looking for lost gifts that we can bring back to the person, of something they may really embrace. And it could be anything. You know, I mean, I'm making things up, but the things I've experienced: people that love to sing, people that love to dance, people that love to ride horses, things that they forgot they loved, that they wanted to do, that really gave them great joy. So we're healing and we're retrieving that little 5-year-old girl, you know, who was lost because her mother screamed at her and her brother pushed her off of something, and she didn't think anybody cared. And when you bring back those little pieces and you nurture them and you take care of them, people get a renewed sense of self and life. It's just amazing. And you have to take care of these little pieces when they're brought back. You know, it's not like, okay, I brought this back and now you're done, I'll see you later. I give people homework. You know, it's a process to reintegrate these pieces.
Yeah, you have to reintegrate it. You have to nurture it. You have to constantly kind of shift back there, because you've been stuck in other patterns, you know. And, you know, just like we were saying, your lady not focusing on what's happening in that moment right before her eyes.
Yeah.
You know, two people can look at the same thing and see completely different scenarios, I guess.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting stuff. And the soul, you know, I mean, I've always feel like I've been very fortunate, because I've been able to see things pretty clearly in soul retrievals. And that also helps, because when people get like evidential information, then they can really grasp it. You know, I had one patient years ago when I saw the soul fragment. I saw, this was the weirdest thing. It still sticks with me to this day. I think she was 9. She was sitting in an ugly, like, green recliner, eating M&Ms and watching My Three Sons. And that's when the soul fragmentation occurred. And when I brought that up, I said, you're going to think this sounds ridiculous, but this is what I saw. Because I had no idea. I only knew her as a 55-year-old nurse. And she's like, oh my God, that was my favorite thing to do. So that for her gave her what she needed to say, oh my God, that's it. You know, and then of course with the wounds and the healing and so forth and so on. It's powerful medicine. It really is.
I've always been puzzled by, you know, I tend to think of, you know, our brain. We did a podcast called, I think the brain is as a transceiver. It's constantly transmitting and receiving information. And I tend to think it's best, you know, it could obviously be tuned. The problem is we're so out of tune with all the distractions that we've completely ignored and, like we said, forgotten about a lot of the things that fulfilled, sustained, guide, balanced, etc. But I tend to think of our brain as a perfect evolutionary design. It is a transceiver, and that the default condition would be introducing a toxin or an exogenous source is essentially only going to disrupt at least the brain's processes, which to me is kind of the point, whether that's the, tobacco, the Native Americans, cannabis, the ayahuasca, the Mazatec Indians used Salvia divinorum, ibogaine, mescaline. They all, LSD, even a synthetic thing, they all go in and they disrupt the brain's tuner, its transceiver.
Right.
And maybe that's how they're entheogenic. They reveal the divine within. But there's this fallacy that people think that the chemical or the plant or itself, at least I think it's a fallacy, has the wisdom. So it's like, well, yeah, you're just you and you're whatever, sinful, or you're unable to reach the spirit plane. But if you take this substance, it contains that wisdom, and then it will give it to you. It somehow will impart it to you.
Right.
I don't know. I've always struggled with that. It's kind of like, I think the most veridical, bona fide, pure energetic states, a point of consciousness, it would be altered or confused or distracted or misinterpreted by the presence of a substance. And that's why I've kind of struggled with shamanism, because there almost always is some use that the shaman itself does to connect with the spirit world.
There can be. That's not the way that I was trained. I mean, I was educated in it to a degree because, of course, it's just part of understanding what it does. And I remember in one book that I read, and I'm drawing a blank now, but the woman who was training to be a shaman, and this was, after she walked through the desert for, forever, did all these things, had to eat like this whole bag of mushrooms. And luckily she didn't die. But from what I understand, and this is just my take on it, ayahuasca, the shaman might take it, but normally they're overseeing other people. And I think that it's become trivialized. And to me, like, I've had friends that have gone to Peru and South America, to different places, obviously
Right.
South America, but you know what I'm saying? And, they're going to do a ayahuasca ceremony. And I'm like, no, it's a ceremony that you prepare for a certain period of time. It is important. There's prayer and meditation and journeying. And then I know some people do take it because they want to I guess, crack open their soul, look at their biggest fears, what's chasing them, and they want to clear it out. And to me, that's the ceremony of releasing whatever it is you're looking to release. But then, you hear these ayahuasca ceremonies where people are just going to hotel rooms somewhere with the shaman.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And to me, that's not shamanism. That is, I don't know what that is. That's a fad. That's about money. That's about saying that you're cool. That's about saying that you're doing it. But that's not the true spirit of shamanism.
Right.
That one has nothing to do with the other. That's like a bastardized, weird thing to me that people do.
Yeah, I guess my point is, people tend to think, oh, well, like you said, I need to go to South America. I need to take this magical plant which contains the magical wisdom. And maybe it does, or maybe it doesn't even matter. But I kind of always felt like it did matter, because it's not it's best to think of it not as the chemical that's providing some experience.
Yeah.
The chemical is providing a disruption in all of the barriers that your brain will have to have in place in order to walk and talk and eat and sleep and have a job and raise kids and all of the things that really sort of distract us from our spiritual nature. And it's a kick in the pants in that regard. So if you are flying people down out of the country, out west, you get them all in one place. You can create this experience by inflicting the chemical, and that buys you a lot of time, I guess. Maybe it seems to me like cheating a little bit, but it's not. That's the thing where I think it's been corrupt a little bit, is people think that the molecule has the experience, and it's like, well, no, it's just unleashing what's inevitably and inherently within you. And so you really don't need those things. They may assist you for the first time to get you to peek behind the curtain. And I'm not saying they're not profoundly life-altering spiritual experiences, but if you kept doing the same thing in the same way, you would not get the same result.
No, you would not. I agree completely. I agree with you. And what these different substances do is they take down your natural defenses and kind of rip apart the ability to defend yourself. I've never done ayahuasca. I don't have any desire to. My mentor never, I just never had any interest in the first place, but she never counseled me that it was a good idea. And I believe most shamans that are doing the soul retrievals and the kind of work that I was trained to do and just doing this kind of shamanic work, they don't take substances to do it. You don't need to. And I couldn't imagine ever trying to do a healing while taking these substances.
Right, yeah.
People in a manner of training with shamanism will go to Peru and they'll sit on the highest mountain with the elders. But they fasted for a certain period of time and they've done this, and it is reverent.
Mm-hmm.
It is reverent. It's not like, let's go get high and see what happens.
Right.
But there is that root. And I think that's kind of sad because that's what's taken away the magic and the reverence.
I guess I feel like it's kind of sad too. But on the other hand, I'm sort of a big fan and supporter of it, because I think if somebody hasn't had, at least in their conscious memory, that experience of the exaltation out of their own ego and their own consciousness and focus, that even if they're recreationally taking acid or something for the first time in high school or college or whatever, it's an important event in that it is the first event that's really flicked them upside the spiritual head and says, hey, there's a lot more to reality here than heaven and earth as you understand it.
Right.
So it's not, it can create an opportunity. It can create a window. It's like jumping on a trampoline and seeing over a wall. You can only do that for split seconds, and you're only going to see the same vantage point at best. And I think the power of shamanism is to teach people that, one, there is a wall, there's something on the other side of the wall, and it's our duty and our sacred mission to build a ladder to learn how to traverse that wall and kind of find our connection to the holy land within. Yes,
I agree with you. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it.
Thanks. I blacked out there for a second, but
you did that. You covered well. You did a good job,
Adrienne. This was tintillating. I thank you so much. We talked about acupuncture, we talked about Chinese, we talked about Egyptian, we talked about sacred geometry and third eye and stem cells and shamans and all kinds of cool stuff.
Yes.
I'm on my way to go do a session right now with Sam, so I'm super excited. I feel like I'm focused. I'm ready.
Well, I hope you have a fantastic session.
Yeah, I will. You will be the first to know. I will let you know. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom.
Thank you.
Happy 4th of July. Let's go celebrate America.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me.
All right. So we're going to think of a cool topic for next time. It's going to be 2 weeks out, but
what? 2 weeks out? What are you talking about?
We're going to be switching kind of to an every other week model. So most people are used,
interesting.
To sitting by their phones and waiting for the weekly release, but I just want to let them down easily. We're going to be going to every other week this summer.
All right.
Get guests and guest hosts and all that good stuff. So
fantastic.
Thanks again. And anyone who wants to experience the Egyptian acupuncture and shamanism, come to the healer herself, Adrienne.
Thank you.
Until next time, be well. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.